It's great to have some experience, but if you have somebody coming on board that is hungry to learn, that is coachable, that is humble, that is like, just show me the ropes and teach me, I think that's a bigger attribute than almost any of the skills that a junior person could come in to the game.
I don't hire SEOs without experience, but if they have built their own sites and have ranked it for something, that counts. I love that person more than the person with 2 years of agency experience.
It's no longer just about SEO and analytics and numbers. Like, how do you talk to people? How do you challenge them? How do you give them the resources and opportunities to succeed? Because
are they doing the job to get the job? Meaning they're doing their job, but if they want that promotion, are they also kind of expanding or really stretching themselves and stepping up in ways that maybe others on the team aren't?
Welcome to this week's episode of the Digital Revolution podcast, everyone. This is going to be a little bit different than weeks past, where I normally interview one person at a time about a specific topic in the digital world. And as you know, by this time, we have launched multiple podcasts around the SEO series that we're doing. But in this one, we have a special episode where we thought we would come in and try to help people in the SEO world who are trying to elevate their job or their career. So not necessarily a tactic on how to elevate your business online, but if you're in the SEO world in different levels, so the three areas that we're going to go over are you're just barely getting in, maybe you graduated high school or college and want to get into digital marketing, or you've been doing it for a year or so, still feel kind of junior. We're going to talk through that section. We're going to go through if you've been in it for a while and want to get into a leadership role, like maybe a director or senior manager, something like that. We'll talk through that. And then the third level is if you are already a director or VP and you're trying to get a different job or a promotion. Let me do a quick introduction and then kind of explain, why I feel like we are somewhat of a good fit to talk through this. I'm mostly going to be moderating. I will chime in and talk when I have some thoughts here and there. But we have Brian Wood from Minnesota. Brian has recently done a podcast with us around enterprise SEO and has tons and tons of experience, has hired lots and lots of SEOs. In fact, he has over 50 people on his team right now currently doing SEO. And so, he has experience hiring SEOs to be in a position like this. So Brian, welcome to the show. JJ Stedman. JJ and I have worked together in multiple different companies, even all the way back to our retail days when we were helping manage PetSmart together. And then we both jumped deep into the SEO world. After that, JJ and I have worked together in multiple different companies. And if the pattern persists, I believe we'll be working together at some point in the future as well. But JJ and I, as well as Kevin, let me introduce Kevin as well, because I think the three of us kind of combined have done lots of interviews. Kevin Hancock, also, we have worked at multiple different companies together, and Kevin is a partner at FireS Marketing as well. And so, again, we are working together. But between Kevin and JJ and I, we have worked at multiple companies where we've hired lots and lots of SEO people. We've gone through hundreds of interviews, whether we've liked them or not liked them or whatever. The fact is you go through a lot of interviews to find the right person that you like. So we feel like we have sort of a grasp on, as a manager, what we were looking for when hiring an SEO, which is why we feel like we can kind of give these tips. But between the four of us, we've done lots of interviews over the years. We have also tried to elevate ourselves within the business, within the SEO positions. And so we're kind of taking this from two different perspectives. But those three categories that we're going to talk about, the first one we're going to jump in and talk about is if you're a junior SEO or you're just getting out of high school or college and jumping in, what is it that we feel like as managers we would look for when hiring an SEO? So maybe let me start with JJ. If you were a manager hiring a new person, what are some of the expectations you would hope that this person has coming into the job?
Yeah, I actually just went through this a couple months ago. Had a need for an entry-level person, and I kind of put out there, I'm happy to teach and help somebody get interest in this industry, not too concerned about how much past experience. So I actually reached out to some local universities, networked through LinkedIn, did job posting. And really my approach to this was I am looking for somebody who cares and has some sort of a desire, drive to move forward with something. Right? Like when I was reaching out to the colleges, these students don't have a lot of really good direct SEO experience. They're learning about it in school. a huge advantage nowadays. I know from the universities here in Utah that they teach marketing classes. They start to dive a little bit deep into very specific channels. With SEO being one of them. So a lot of them, as I would talk to them, had an understanding of, SEO's this, or I've been told this, and here's what the acronym means, things like that. But there's no real world experience. So I can't really interview them and have them show me data and stats and these things. It's irrelevant. And so really, I'm looking for somebody who is testing the waters. They are playing with free tools out there. They're doing it their own way. They're networking, just a lot of these different signals that say, I'm very interested in marketing. I want to pursue this as a career. And I'm actually making effort, because if they have that, when they come onto my team or the position I'm hiring for, even if it's entry level, I'll teach everything. They're going to ask the right questions. They're going to be curious. They're going to be less stagnant in their role. They're going to want to keep going. They're going to spend time themselves researching and reading blogs, watching YouTube videos on how to get better, asking questions, finding ways to make something work, or failing and trying. That's all I want. Somebody who cares and is willing to try, and the success and the failure doesn't really matter to them, because SEO is a long-term game anyways. I know I'm investing long-term in this person as long as they're willing to invest in me as well.
Hunger is a big thing that you and I have talked about in the last. Hunger to be, in like over the last few years, hunger over skills, or sometimes even experience, is better. Like, it's great to have some experience, but if you have somebody coming on board that is hungry to learn, that is coachable, that is humble, that is like, just show me the ropes and teach me, I think that's a bigger attribute than almost any of the skills that a junior person could come in to the game with, right? Kevin, from your standpoint, a lot of times if I'm coming out of college or high school and want to get into the game, I don't have my own website. I don't have my, maybe a certification from some, YouTube university or LinkedIn university or something. In your opinion, Kevin, what other skills help in the SEO world? And what I mean by that is, like, maybe I'm a good writer. Maybe I love reading and I'm creative, or maybe I love developing, and so I'm good at technical SEO, or could be potentially, right? So, like, what other skills do you feel like somebody coming in could have that would make them a good SEO long term?
Yeah. So with that, like, rubber stamped SEO skill, but could be shoehorned into that a little bit. Yeah, I think it's always good if someone can, and this is not something I don't think they can teach in a classroom setting. Sometimes it's just left brain, right brain type of a thing, but being able to look at data, look at a situation, forget the data, just, and extrapolate a narrative.
Yeah.
What is this data telling me? What's the story? I do X, I'm going to get Y. Why do I get that? So if they have that ability to tell a story, from whatever situation they're in, I to liken it to SEO, like, look at data. Obviously a new person wouldn't know exactly what they're looking at. So I don't know exactly what the real world non-SEO example would be for that, but maybe that's just curiosity. I mean, chalk it up to, like, they're just curious. And that's maybe where it stems from.
Yeah. I think that it was Jordan Peterson that said that strategy is a key part to success in the business world. And when he went on to say that, like, being able to look around the corner and almost predict the future, knowing, like, around the corner, here's what's going to happen. So here's the strategy I'm going to take before I get to that corner. And he said that one of the ways that he has found you can practice that strategy or create that part of that sort of muscle in your brain is by doing creative writing, right? If you write fictional books, even if you never publish them, you're always thinking of the end game. Like, okay, if I'm writing about this character, where is he going to be in the end? And you sort of learn how to look around that corner. So I think that's a good point from a data standpoint. As an SEO, you look at the data and you're like, where is this going to take me long term? How do I look around the corner, and how do I adjust in SEO to make sure that I'm in the right spot around the corner? So that's really good insight.
Right.
Brian, from a resume standpoint, what do you recommend somebody has on a resume that's just coming into the field, or maybe even been in it just for, a short period of time? what should they have on their resume for you as a manager to look at it? Since at this time, we know there's a lot of people who are out of work, and people are getting hundreds or thousands of resumes at a time. What aspects of a resume really stick out to you as a hiring manager?
So to me, when I'm looking at a more junior SEO role, which for me, I don't hire people who don't have experience, only because I find like half of them end up not liking SEO. I'm like, if somebody's at least done a job in SEO and they're looking for another one, at least I know this is something that fits with them. On the resume, I think there's more. I don't think there's a lot you can do right on a resume. I think there's just a lot you can do wrong. So to me, your resume should look like a normal resume. Don't try to be creative and have some weird, different formatting of your resume. Like, I need to be able to scan it quickly, see if you're qualified. Like you said, you get tons of resumes for these SEO positions these days. I despise buzzwords. I despise like a lot of, sometimes the less experience someone has, the more like bloated with babble their resume gets. But what you do want to do is you do want to try to be specific about what you did and what kind of outcome it got. And it doesn't have to be you increase company revenue 50%. It can be, here's a project that I worked on and this is who I had to work with. And then this was the result when it released. I think that's helpful. But yeah, I think mostly it's just, be a human being, try to make the job of the recruiting manager and the hiring manager easier, looking through your resume.
Yeah. I think if we can like level set as well, with all of the SEOs out there or all of the future SEOs, if you are new to SEO, if you're just graduating high school or college and just getting into it, the expectations around the type of job you're going to get. I feel like a lot of younger kids graduate college and they're like, if I don't start at 100,000 a year, then I failed, right? Like, you will have to start at like a $30,000 a year job, potentially at an agency where you are just on a conveyor belt, like just to set those expectations. But most of us have been through that, and we started at that 30 and went to the 50 and the 70, and like we grew even within the agency before we went to other in-house companies and stuff. So understand that you will have to start lower. You will have to get that experience, right? Brian's saying he doesn't hire anybody without experience. So that's one way to do it. Just get into an agency, low level, junior, just get started, get something on that paper. JJ, I think you had a thought, but I also was going to come to you as well, because I think one of the things you and I agree on is how to get that experience. Is that what you were going to talk about?
Yeah, and then touch a little bit into kind of what goes with resumes. So yeah, to get the experience, right? As someone who has looked for entry level SEOs or happy to teach things like that, little things do matter to me. I agree with Brian on the buzzwords. Even like somebody who's entry level, out of college, whatever, and they're throwing around buzzwords. Like, I'm not sure you know what that means yet, because you've never actually had to discuss it or have an argument about it. And so yeah, buzzwords are that's a little heavy on a resume. But if it's I'll say this: build a website, right? Start. When I got started in an agency, the person hosting this podcast, Eli, challenged me in our first job together, saying, "Go build a website, find something, and just do it." And at the time, it was very article heavy, link stuffing. It was super easy to rank for stuff, but you had to put effort into it. So I'm like, okay, great. I figured out how to use WordPress through the job because our clients were using it. I figured out the basics. I stumbled and fell. I have a whole story about how I started my first company, which was a website at the time and has been going for 13 years now. But I just happened to stumble across a local niche idea and just ran with it. Built it on WordPress, installed my own themes, learned HTML, learned CSS, and just figured it out. If anybody comes to me on their resume, I'm like, yeah, I have a website, Squarespace, Wix. I don't care what it is, honestly, I really don't. You've tried. Now you have a presence online. It could be your online resume for all I care, because now you try and do something. And if you're especially interested in SEO, if you have title tags and meta descriptions and alt tags and good navigation and a footer, and on about website optimization, it doesn't matter if you're ranking to me or not. Like you you actually put forth the effort, and did something, right? You can say the same about robots in the sitemap. If they just exist, that's all I care about, because now the effort's there. Like, the hunger we talked about. Even like, hey, I installed Google Analytics. I installed Google Search Console. I ran my first report on SEMrush, or pick a tool, right? It doesn't really matter to me. To me, those are good softwares and names to drop in a resume. It's like, oh, they're exploring, they're interested, they've done some Googling to kind of figure things out on their own. The fact that if somebody's installed Google Search Console, it's like, hey, I track keywords monthly in Search Console. That's a huge win, because again, there's the motivation, the drive there to watch and learn more. And maybe they don't know what to do with that data yet, or how to make the website better, or actually get ranked for anything. But that's where we're going to work together. So for me, the resume section, even if it's extra skills at the end, or here's what else I know. SEMrush, Moz, Analytics, Search Console, etc. Any of that stuff goes, okay, now there's something I can work with, instead of I got to teach you what analytics is, or any things I've mentioned.
Yeah, some of the struggle of going through the Googling, like knowing what to Google to install analytics and what to Google to work SEMrush or whatever is huge. You and I have talked about that, and a lot, actually. Most of the people, that is what sets most of our hires apart. Like, most of them, we'd have them like on paper side by side and be like, I like them both personality wise. They both have the same amount of years of experience, but this person, they have their own website that they're working on, they're experimenting, they're doing, and that made just enough difference to put them over the edge, and we ended up hiring them. Brian, you had something?
Yeah, I think that without question, the best SEOs always have built their own sites, have tried to rank sites for stuff. Like I said, I don't hire SEOs without experience, but if they have built their own sites and have like ranked it for something, that counts. I love that person more than the person with 2 years of agency experience. Like, to me, I guess that comes with the hunger, right? It's that intellectual curiosity. You're out there, you're experimenting, and particularly if it's your own site, right? It's like, you're not ranking on the backs of anybody else's work, right? That's all you. I love that.
Yeah. And I mean, you can go to YouTube, you can go to Google, you can go to LinkedIn. There's so many places. I have the digitalexperienceacademy.com. If you want to go to it, basically teaches you, here's how you pick a domain name. Here's how you do hosting. Here's how you install WordPress. It walks you step by step on how to do that, all the way through basic SEO 101 and keyword research, and how to optimize a page on the website, how to monetize it with AdSense. Like, it walks you through that. But even if you don't go to the Digital Experience Academy, you can go to YouTube and say how to build a Shopify store in an hour. And there's 500 different tutorials that pull up that will walk you through step by step. You have YouTube here, you have your screen here, and as they do it, you pause it and you do it over here. Like, there's so many different places that you can go to learn. Kevin, on that note, looking back at your career, on how you were educated and how you continue to stay, above the fold on knowledge from SEO, where would you recommend people go online to become educated in the beginning and stay up to date moving forward?
Oh man, there's so many talking heads out there and so many different places you can go. We've mentioned YouTube. Podcasts are a thing now. I've heard people like to listen to podcasts. There are obviously conferences, but if you're just, I assume we're still talking about a person just starting. There's I like to, I use Twitter or X, and I follow great voices there. You got to follow like the John Muellers of the world. Rand Fishkin back in the day. I don't know how much he still puts out a bunch of stuff. He was the founder of Moz. There's a lot of different voices out there, and they're constantly, one thing I look for are case studies, like people that have done experiments, lots of data behind it, lots of websites, tens of thousands, if not millions of words, keywords that they're tracking the ranking for. I was just reading one this morning that they broke down the Google leak and some of the things that came out of that, and they went back and redid some of their looking at the data from some of their other testing and applied some of these new things, new revelations that came from the Google leak, to find that, man, if you do this with the helpful content update, things will change. Again, this is getting a little more advanced, but those are the types of things and the types of places I go. Constantly watching, different YouTube things too on various topics of SEO. Usually at this point, it's not like how to do SEO. It's more like, okay, where's a good, solid, high domain authority backlink that gets lots of traffic? What's a good way to kind of go and scalp a lead there, or search out and create a relationship with those types of websites that they want to link to. So yeah, those are some of the places that they're pretty much all free, except for, the mentioning of going to conferences. There's sometimes not a good replacement for just getting in touch with other humans and hearing right from the horse's mouth and rubbing literal shoulders with people that are in the industry. And I've garnered a lot of amazing insights by going to conferences at different places at different times.
Yeah, I'd also add go to LinkedIn. I mean, that's where Brian and I connected, and
LinkedIn's got good
I
stuff. Yeah.
saw a lot of the stuff he was putting out, and I'm just pulling up my list of people that I've interviewed so far for this series, and I would recommend you go to LinkedIn and follow all of them. In fact, if you want a list of all of them, you could go to firesmarketing.com, go to the podcast section, and I have a list of all the topics we're covering, as well as the category for the SEO series. And I have people like John Huntington, Brian Wood, Jacob Andra, Allison Wong, Sophia Tyson, Ari Mason, Hasnan Nawaz, Steven Schneider around content is really awesome. Christina Sackinger, if you want to learn about SEO audits and algorithms. Chris Long is crazy good at technical SEO. I mean, I could go on and on and on, but those are some of the people that I follow, and they're constantly, like, for example, if you go follow Chris Long, he is constantly breaking down this technical SEO in the most simple way. So go follow some of them, and they'll link to some other experts and some other blog posts and stuff like that. So, yeah, all really, really good advice. JJ or Brian, do you have any other places you'd recommend they go to learn?
I think I would just put the caveat to that when you're looking at the internet, particularly like some of the SEO news roundup sites, there is a lot of garbage information out there.
Yeah.
And so I think like the advice of like, hey, here's some people to follow. They have valuable things to say. Like there is a problem, right, in the publishing world where you need to keep publishing things, whether you have anything valuable to say or not. And so knowing who to follow can be helpful, because I have seen a lot of junior SEOs have just kind of a lot of like random misinformation because they read it, they believed it, they never tested it.
Yeah, good call out. So be careful as well. So go do some Googling, go on LinkedIn, but also make sure that, yeah, especially on the forums, there's a lot of garbage stuff that you just want to be careful of.
But there's the value again in having your own website is you hear it and you could test it out in a small way on your site and prove for yourself, like, maybe it's just my industry, my niche that I'm in, whatever it might be. It didn't work for me, or maybe it did, but there are some things like you hear, they seem pretty self-evident, whether it's true, and other things you're like, not so sure about that one. Yeah. I like Brian's point there for sure.
Yeah. Kevin, let's start with you on this one. Let's move to the next section where we talk about somebody who has been in SEO for a couple of years. They're looking to maybe potentially become a senior SEO, or potentially even a manager of people in SEO. What are some of those key differences that you'd look for when hiring somebody like that versus somebody who is very junior?
Yeah, I mean the intangibles, the being humble, hungry, and smart. We talked about that a little bit. Are they teachable? I think are they doing the job to get the job? Meaning they're doing their job, but if they want that promotion, are they also kind of expanding or really stretching themselves and stepping up in ways that maybe others on the team aren't? And just do they have a good track record of meeting deadlines and doing the things that they do what they say they're going to do, type of thing. So, and another thing too is, every year we get those annual reviews, and you've got to, make the case for the cost of living increase that you may or may not get. That's always it seems trite, and maybe it's just like, okay, we got to jump through these hoops, give myself a 1 through 4, whatever. But you can do that, but bring the receipts, like document things like I did this last year and it increased our traffic, you know, 13% year over year, which resulted in X number of conversions, which got us X number of additional revenue that we wouldn't have realized had it not been for these efforts, which was, a test that I was the brainchild for, like bring the receipts, do the whole humble brag, and see what you can do to get that next position, or the raise. Those are the types of things like, that will catch a manager's or director's attention. Like, hey, they're invested. Like they definitely are getting this. They're making a positive impact to the company, to the team, to the bottom line. Let's see if we can put them in more of a leadership role.
Yeah, along those same lines, I think there's two different areas here that we could talk about. One is if you're being internally promoted, and the other is if you're going out and saying, I'm going to go to this other company. So as you were talking about that, one thing, every time I update my resume, I think back to other jobs and I'm like, man, I wish I had the data to show that, that I put in my fourth quarter numbers and stuff because I did it to my boss. So another recommendation along those same lines is save that data somewhere. Like it's not something that when you're working with that company, a lot of times you'll put on your LinkedIn profile because sometimes there's, privacy issues or whatever, but there's ways to word it. Once you leave that company, you can go back and use those percentages and stuff. So save that data as you have those good experiences so that you can either put them on your resume or talk to them in the interview, because people are going to ask for those real life tangible stories and experiences. JJ, you had a thought?
Yeah, I actually tell my employees that at a minimum, every 6 months, go update your resume, check your LinkedIn. It doesn't mean you're looking, doesn't mean you're on your way out. But to your point exactly, you will forget the projects you've done, the things you've accomplished. That you gotta find numbers somewhere that are potentially okay to share, right? X% increase in this or that, right? It's okay to update your resume consistently, because you don't want to forget. If you're trying to level up your career, you got to bring the numbers. And kind of to Kevin's point, like I take a very untraditional route to interviewing. I don't like the humble people at first. I will do a phone screen interview to begin with. The very first question I ask is, tell me everything you know about SEO or marketing, whatever I'm going for, and brag to me. You have 5 minutes to brag about what you have accomplished and done. One, it can make it uncomfortable for them for a second, but it kind of sets the tone of like, let's just be open. Let's just get this out there. I'm not following a traditional checklist of questions. Not interested in that, because we got a couple minutes on the phone. I need to know that you have potential and knowledge, experience, failure, successes. So maybe we can do a sit down interview or formal, right? So I will have people literally tell them, I need you to brag to me. Tell me everything you know. Don't leave anything off the table. This is your chance to show, right? And the best people are the ones who are like, yeah, they just fire hose me with stuff. And now I'm like, okay, now I know where I can ask my next questions. I can dig into strategy, right? If we're going for somebody that's a manager level or senior, it's like, okay, cool. Talk about this or talk about that, or what about this update with Google? And I can start drilling them to see if they truly know their stuff, or if they are using these buzzwords, or they've kind of just been hanging on somebody else's vine with them, of tagging along and kind of know the right things to say or do for that next interview to try and get that promotion or increase in pay. So yeah, I want them to be a little prideful and just lay it out there.
That's smart. It's smart to know where to ask the questions and dig down deeper too. Because if they use buzzwords around, I don't know, on-page optimization, whatever, then you can like really drill in and say, tell me everything you know about on-page optimization, right? Because then you'll really know. And if you're in this category and you can't answer a question in detail like that, you're not the right person for this, right? So good call.
And now I'm not wasting my time either, right? Now I know, like, oh, you mentioned all these on page, this and that. Okay, let's dive in. They're like, well, I helped with this. Like, okay, we're not a fit. Like, I don't need to bring you in. Both of our time is saved. Yeah. Let's find the next person.
Yeah, absolutely. Brian, what type of SEO skills do you look for when hiring somebody in this position? I know we've talked about like, okay, you need experience and you have that time, but like what kind of skills do you look for when hiring somebody in this position?
So so like typically when I'm interviewing, I make a fake website. I make a fake website with a web page, and I'm like, here's a page, right? Because when I'm looking at a resume, you're kind of just looking for like relevant experience, someone who doesn't sound like an asshole, someone who can articulate that they've worked on something that feels relevant. Um, and sometimes we try to have some phone screen questions to like sort of suss out people who know what they're talking about and don't. But skill wise, for me, it's all kind of about practical application. And that comes from either the candidate proactively is like, I looked at your site and here's what I found. And here's some recommendations I have. Or, like I said, I build a fake site, I have a fake page, and I'm like, here's a page. I want this page to rank number 1 for this keyword. Look through it and tell me what you would do. And it's set up in a way, it's like the worst SEO you could ever do is this page, but it's set up in a way that like, I'm trying to decide how much to say here for my cunning SEO test, but it's set up in a way that like junior SEOs will do these things. People a little more experienced will say these things. Like manager level people will do these, and like very high level people will look at it differently. But so me, I've got to have basic optimizations, and I'm okay if you have some like things that aren't true that you think are true. Everybody, is learning forever. I'm discovering things I thought were true for years that weren't true. Mm-hmm. One of the red flags for me, which surprisingly, this typically is for people who come out of agencies, but it can happen for higher level people too, is I present them with the scenario and they like get flustered and they're like, oh, well, I don't have my tools. And they literally, without their SEO tools, can't start to assess a page.
Yeah.
And then they start to describe, well, normally I have this plugin and the plugin will tell me this. And I'm like, do you think there's a way you could find out what the meta description is without a plugin? Mm-hmm. Is that possible? But yeah, I mean, I want to see practical application. Something I think that is important. Like, so I built this test partially because it's like a well-structured test, but partially because there is a belief that is 99% of the time wrong, that when employers are asking you like, hey, what did you see on our site that you would change? Some people have this belief that like, ooh, they're running the scam where they're just interviewing me to get all my great ideas and implement it. I'm sure there's an asshole out there somewhere who does that, but that is not the case for almost anyone. And frankly, if the ideas that you can describe in a half hour or hour interview, if those ideas is your value, you're not worth a hire anyway, right? It's the person who can sit down and do the work and do that stuff. So I made this one so it's like very clearly, you're not testing on our site. This is a crazy, silly site with silly keywords that isn't related to anything. But I do think as you start getting to the manager, senior manager level, particularly director, you should show up to an interview with, I've gone through your site. I've noticed these things. Have you tried this? I got to be careful about not being too cocky. Half of the time, your ideas will turn out they've already tried them. And if you're applying to a good SEO team, hopefully the person you're interviewing with knows more about SEO than you do. So you want to tread the cockiness line there. But I would strongly say, like, I love it when people come in and say, here's what I think you should do. I've done this my whole career when I interview. I'm like, I'm going to be familiar with the site. I'm going to show up with like, hey, here's some stuff. And when I was younger, I was like, you should do this. This is genius. Oh, you already done that. It failed. Whoops. So I learned a little bit. I went up.
I personally could not agree with you more. In fact, I see it on LinkedIn all the time where people are like, stop doing these free audits for these companies. And it brings me back to a story my dad told me growing up where his best friend, I think it was like right after college, he wanted to work at the airport. He wanted to get into like aerospace engineering or something. And he was like, I can't remember the exact details of it, but he had to be at the airport and then work his way up. And so he went to the airport, he applied, he didn't get the job. And so he's like, I'm just going to go every day and find the hiring manager. I'm gonna talk to him every day and say, has anything changed? Has anything changed? And what he ended up doing is he ended up packing a lunch, going and sitting like in front of the door this guy came out with, and every day that this guy came out, he's like, hey, do you have any work? I'm willing. I don't care if I, clean the toilets for free. Like, I just need to work here, and I need to, try to work my way up. Either way, it went on for a little while, and the guy ended up giving him a chance, actually hiring him for free for a little while, and then ended up getting a full-time job and worked his way up into a really big position at the airport. And so every time I hear that, I'm like, you're not willing, like, if you're looking for another job and you're telling me you're not willing to put in, yeah, I mean, an hour to 5 hours, however long it takes, right, to actually get this job that could change your life. Like, it could be the best thing for you. It could be, that you get there, and a year in, you get a promotion, and 2 years later, you get another promotion that leads you to another job. And if you're not willing to do that, that to me is frustrating, especially right now where, there's so many people out of work, and they're just like, I'm going to apply here, but I'm not going to go above and beyond because you're that one person, like you were saying, the 1% that is trying to take advantage of me. Like, how many times in our career have we had people come in? Like, a lot of times we'll say, okay, second interview, go analyze the site and tell us what, if they haven't already done it, we'll say, go analyze the site and come back with stuff. And we have people come back with a huge presentation that like took an hour to go through. And we have other people come back that's like, I didn't have a lot of time to like write anything down, but let me tell you just kind of what I think. And like, you could tell the difference in quality of employee from the person who put together a beautiful presentation and put it up on the screen and walked us through everything in a humble way, as humble as you can be. And a lot of the stuff we were like, yeah, we know about that. Yep, we know about that too. Yep, we can't do that because of some technology concern or whatever. But like, I'm glad that you at least saw that. So I think that is, I think you're spot on there, Brian. So thanks for bringing that up. Kevin, how important is communication and teamwork at this level?
I don't think that it could be overstated enough, rather, how important it is. It's, you can't work I don't think in a silo and be successful at this level. You need to definitely have people that are communicating their timelines, communicating their deliverables, and just making sure that, everything is working in harmony. So, being able to also just articulate the idea that you're trying to do. One thing we've probably all told people, like, don't just come to me with problems. You saw something that was wrong. What's an idea to solve that? What's something that, good, bad, or indifferent, just come with something. Like, if you expect me to be the idea guy all the time, we're not going to get very far as a company. We all have to come with ideas, and I hope that too, that it can illustrate that some, at least I have seen with some employees, some are a little more timid, and they don't like to break things. They don't want to upset the turnip cart or whatever. I try to set the precedent early on. Like, guys, we got to fail faster. Like, if we got to get to what doesn't work as quickly as we can. And so we know that what does work. If you haven't taken down an entire website because you updated a theme yet, then you haven't really done a lot of SEO.
I did that 3 times this week.
Yeah. So it's those types of things. You got to earn your stripes and then communicate those learnings to the team, and everyone should be sharing that knowledge base and just making sure that we're all learning from those experiences, learning from the setbacks, learning from the wins.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's critical to the success of the individual, of the team, of the organization, to have that, to have the attitude just permeate the whole organization, that we communicate well with one another.
Yeah. Before we move on to the last section, is there anything else from the three of you that we may have forgotten? Brian, you have something?
I think it's maybe worth, and I'm curious to hear you guys' experience on this, but like, just sort of level setting. You're looking to get into SEO, you've been in SEO, you're looking to move up. From my perspective, there are like a few specific like roadblocks to promotion, right? And like you get in at a entry level SEO. It is usually not difficult to get promoted, and whether that's like SEO specialist to senior specialist or strategist, if there's more than 2 levels, like moving up there is hard. And then you have the manager, and it is hard to go from the senior SEO to this SEO manager. And then you'll have like an SEO manager and a senior manager and maybe a director, depending on the company. But then there's like this head of SEO, director of SEO, usually is the title, head of SEO. That is a really hard bump to get over. Usually, this is not always true. Usually, I would say the majority of the time, to cross one of those bumps, you're switching companies. It is, companies are usually hiring very often that person one level down to bring them up to this level. It is particularly for head of SEO, right? Like you want to be head of SEO, unless, your current head of SEO gets hit by a bus, there's only one position. And if you're just starting, it is by leaps and bounds easiest to be hired in an agency. Agencies, there's a lot of agencies, they have a ton of employees, and they usually have a built-in mechanism to train you. The majority of agencies suck ass, are terrible, and your ability to grow as an SEO is going to depend on you. And this is true everywhere. Like it's going to depend on you. Like never found a good SEO that just sat there and let someone fill them up with SEO knowledge, right? You have to drive your career. But like agencies have like usually an intake process and teaching you, and you get to work on a whole bunch of different sites. You get to see how something that worked on one site doesn't always work on another site. My advice is typically, if you're new, you're at an agency, great. Now you want to move to in-house. In-house pays more. In-house, for good in-house team, you do more interesting SEO work. But all of your time is spent on one site. A good in-house team, very brief definition of it, is a team with multiple people. You never ever want to be the in-house SEO where you're a one-person team, because I guarantee you, I've been there, I've been in that role, I've been at those companies, I've hired people from those companies. Those people are not paid well, and you get all kinds of crap on your desk that isn't SEO. So if there's at least a team and it's in-house, that probably pays well. You probably have some advancement opportunity, and more importantly, you're a more desirable hire for a higher level in-house team. I feel like in-house likes to hire from agencies, but in-house rarely hires managers, directors from agencies. So that's my like overview of what the space looks like for those levels. But I spent a few years at an agency. Most of my career has been in-house, so I could have a very biased point of view.
Kevin, you have thoughts?
Yeah, just real quickly, I think your take is, I think, what most people see about agency to in-house and then get over that hump to director is a jump external from the company here. And I just want to talk real quickly about what you brought up as being the single SEO person in the company, in the department. I think you're right there too, is it shows two things. It shows they don't have, they either one, don't have an understanding of what SEO is if they're putting all these other things. And two, they certainly don't have a commitment to it. Like they don't realize that, you can't drag this thing across the finish line by yourself without a lot of extra resources, whether you're the one kind of playing air traffic controller and hiring out the agency work to help you with the blocking and tackling that needs to get done, or just, other tools or other resources that they have. But yeah, it's a tough road to hoe if you're the only guy. You're fighting a stigma almost inside the company. You're like, it's just the SEO guy. I don't even know what he or she does all day long. So
my philosophy with this is that every company will tell you how much they value their employees. And if you want to know how much they value their employees, go to the bathroom and see what kind of toilet paper is sitting there. Same thing with SEO. Everybody's going to say they value the SEO team, but be like, hey, there's only one person. Do they really value it that much? You want to work someplace where they're going to value it.
Yeah. I think that it's important for you to understand that in this industry specifically, the average person only sticks around 1 to 3 years anyway before they go to a new company. And if it's you and you're a boss, and that boss has to get hit by a bus, like you said, before you're promoted, it's okay to look at another job at another company. And if your boss isn't supportive of that, he or she is probably not the right person to be leading you long term anyway, because they shouldn't stunt your growth. And then one more thing, and I'll get to you, JJ. But I think the difference between going from this level to management level is leadership. It is communication. A lot of people get into the management level and they are power hungry, and they're like, well, my boss wants this, so I'm just gonna make it happen, right? So my advice is get a leadership coach. If you don't have one internally, if your boss is not that person that's teaching you, get a leadership coach. One of the people that I've interviewed on in the past is Nicole Harrop, and she is a leadership coach. She's amazing. If you're looking for one, go and connect with her. I'll connect her podcast episode to this so you can see it as well. But there's lots of them out there. So my advice is, if you're going from not leading anybody to leading somebody, you need a leadership coach before you get to that spot. And she talks about that a lot on the podcast. You need to understand how to lead people, how to work with people before you get to that spot. JJ, you had something?
Yeah. Along lines of communication, if anything, come to meeting, go to meetings prepared. There's usually not, in my experience, a lot of day-to-day communication, because there's not a lot of things you can do. Like, oh, I did that in an hour, that's done. You're not checking too many boxes usually. Things take time. They're usually projects that's lengthy, but show up to your meetings with your dashboard ready, your numbers ready. Doesn't, good or bad, doesn't matter. That's the point of the meetings. Like, be prepared to talk in the meeting and back it up with what you've been asked to show, or being proactive in presenting. Like, this is where I think we need to focus on, that tells you, manager, how I'm being productive, or what I'm doing over the next while, or here's my KPI, or rocks, as where we're at. Right? And, here's my progression towards that. Right. The other part of this is that SEO, compared to other channels inside of marketing, SEO is the long game. So points have been already brought up, right? 1 to 3 years at a job, working on stuff over time. Like, you don't really check a lot of boxes in SEO quickly, often. Most, if you're replacing an SEO and they've had SEO at a company before, or we already have the roadmap in sight, in robots file and all that stuff. Like, it exists. You're not really doing the little things anymore. It's long-term stuff. So sticking it out in a role sometimes and with a company is the best way to go, because as you interview, you say, yeah, I was here for 2 years. Here's all these things I accomplished that took forever to do. As a personal example, a Young Living, we were revamping a complete ecosystem of the website. I took charge of trying to take over 1,000 SKUs and make those pages relevant, and not just the United States, it was internationally. And the amount of content we read in books that we found online, that we ran through compliance, through legal, just on and on and on, just to try and get some of these products to rank, or have the potential ranking at some point in the future, was huge. There are some products that we had ranking good, we were trying to improve those. There's others that were not ranking, and it's like, well, what do we do? And it was all about the on-page stuff, and it took a lot of time, over a year, to see that come to fruition. But even then, that I left, at that point, but it took a couple more years for all those signals to start making sense and doing something, seeing the results of it, right? So it's past my time. But the point is, SEO, you kind of have to stick it out. If I'm hiring SEO and I'm seeing somebody bouncing, I even dare say less than a year between jobs, that's a red flag. Because what experience are they truly getting? Are they just optimizing pages, deleting old blog posts, little stuff? Like, okay, cool, but that's a junior, right? You want to be a senior, it's projects. And then, very much like we used to be like, you gotta be able to lead people too. It's no longer just about SEO and analytics and numbers. Like, how do you talk to people? How do you challenge them? How do you give them the resources and opportunities to succeed? Because you're hoping to get that advancement level. Somebody takes you there, and it's, so how are you going to bring somebody else up too? Because now you got to replace you with somebody, and now you got to go be the coach. You got to be the leader. And so you're going to be very self-aware of how you're getting there. And is the timing right? Or do you feel like you've gotten to a good point in your career? And are you willing to do that for somebody else?
Absolutely. Kevin, you have something?
Yeah, I was just thinking as GAJ was saying something that triggered the thought that, if you're not getting clear expectations from your leader, from your boss, like what do they expect me to do? It's hard to hold yourself accountable. And then if you're the leader, yeah, same thing. If you're not setting clear expectations, what needs to happen on a day-to-day, week, month, year basis, you can't hold anyone accountable. So to advance that career, if you're seeking that clarity from your higher ups, like, hey, I need more clarity as to what the expectation is from me. How do I go home every night saying I did a great job today? I hit my metrics. I did everything I was asked to do and beyond. How can I hold myself more accountable to what your expectation is? So make sure you're getting clarity as to what the expectation is out of the role, and how you're helping not just yourself, but how what you're doing helps the team and helps the company. Always kind of be thinking beyond your own.
Yeah. Okay, so let's jump into the last section where if you're already a leader, you've been maybe a manager of people already, maybe even potentially director, but either you're trying to get into a director role or a VP role because you've been doing it for so long. What does it take? And Brian, you've recently gone through a job change and you've experienced this. It's quite a bit different experience than the other two we've already talked about. Walk us through what that was like for you and what you would recommend for people in a similar position.
So the first thing to understand is the overwhelming majority of the best SEO leadership roles are never posted. That job is never posted anywhere. You do not have the opportunity to apply for it. You can only be recruited to it. The good news is you can be like me and be terrible at networking and hate people. And that doesn't harm, because that is not how you get these roles. It's not through networking and I know this person who knows this person who this opens. The way you get these jobs, the way you get recruited for these is SEO. These people are searching for candidates. Recruiters and hiring managers are searching for candidates at the SEO field on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn has an algorithm that determines how to return people based on what the recruiters are searching for. And so spend just a little bit of your SEO brain. If this is a job you're looking for, you're probably very good at what you do. You probably know what you're doing. LinkedIn algorithm is so much simpler than Google's. And there's just, if you want me to, I can take you through a handful of steps, but that is, I think, a very important part of getting these jobs. There are good, I want to stress, the overwhelming majority aren't posted. Some of them are. There's some great SEO leadership roles posted that you can just apply to. But even then, you're a different quality of candidate if you get recruited in versus people who apply into those jobs. And really, you want to be recruited. I'm at Forbes Advisor now. Before that, I was at Age of Learning, at House, at Wayfair, at Best Buy. I did not apply to any of those jobs. Right? Every one of those, in fact, I don't think any of those jobs were ever posted. Right? And so the way to get those jobs is partially to be a qualified person and have like an honest resume that makes you qualified for the jobs. But then, if you don't show up when that recruiter searches for whatever keywords they pulled in off of the job description, you're never going to have the opportunity to be considered for it, even if you're the best person for it.
Walk us through the steps, even if it's brief. Like, is that just basic optimization? Is that being active all of the time? Like, what do you recommend people do on LinkedIn to make sure they do show up?
Sure. Let me go through super high level, and maybe you don't need anything more than high level because LinkedIn isn't that sophisticated. Number one, your profile page obviously should be optimized for a human being to look at it and think they should hire you. You're going to do keywords, but if you keyword stuff your page, it's going to look terrible. And honestly, if anybody knows anything about SEO, they're going to think you're a terrible SEO. You should have a picture. You should have a professional looking photo of yourself, unless there's an extreme situation, you're being stalked by an ex or something. By the way, your resume should not have a picture. That's weird. But on LinkedIn, if you don't have a picture, you look like a spam account.
Yeah.
You should have a picture. You should have a compelling summary. You should look at, let's say, 5 to 10 jobs that you would like to get. Maybe jobs that are like the job you would like to get, even if it's like, I would never work for this company, but hey, they have a VP of SEO role, or they have a head of SEO role. Look through the job descriptions, pay particular attention to anything that's a bulleted list of skills, and think about which of these skills do I think a recruiter might be searching for? Because some of these skills are going to be like ability to multitask, effective communication. No recruiter's searching for, going to look for a director of SEO multitask.
Yeah.
Like, no, they're going to toss in, technical SEO or international or e-commerce. So think a little bit about that. Then try to make sure that your profile is just reasonably optimized for those keywords. And a good place to do that, by the way, is the skills. You can put skills in. That's a good place to put weird things. But I also try to put it somewhere in like the description of your experience at jobs. In fact, something everyone should do right now, and I'm going to make this worth your while because I'm going to give you fantastic advice. But first, you should go to my LinkedIn profile, and you can find it by just searching Brian Wood SEO. You have to put SEO on, otherwise you're going to get a comic book artist who is not me. Find my profile, scroll down to the skills, Control F, type in skills. Endorse me for the skill being endorsed. I have a pet project to make that my overwhelmingly most endorsed skill. And I'll make it worth your while with this following advice about LinkedIn that is not commonly known, that is not just basic optimization. Number one, always respond to every single recruiter who contacts you on LinkedIn, even if that response is, hey, thanks for contacting me. I'm happy with my job right now and not looking. You get ranked higher in LinkedIn's algorithm if you respond to recruiters, because of course, trying to sell a product to recruiters to let them respond. Yeah. Number two, you get ranked higher if you have a connection with someone at the same company as the recruiter. So it's worth your while building your network broadly. Have like a list of every company there's a chance you might want to work for, and try to make sure you just got one or two or three connections in those companies. You should also be aware that hiring managers also have a habit of snooping around on LinkedIn, and they often don't have the great recruiter account. So they're not going to find you unless you're within 3 degrees of separation, right? You're first, second, third. So having a broad network is helpful in getting found by these people. That also means it's kind of nice to connect with recruiters at companies, because recruiters tend to have huge networks. It's a faster way to expand your network. One of the most frustrating things about the LinkedIn algorithm is one of the biggest factors in boosting your ranking is how many people view your profile. So taking actions that cause people to view your profile, ironically, boosts your visibility in search, getting more people to view your profile. I think like when I'm like, hey, I'm searching for a job, or I'm thinking about maybe seeing what else is out there, I do like a quick review of my LinkedIn profile, just make sure everything's up to date. Make sure there's not like some new keywords or something I want to insert. Usually there isn't. Then I will, depending, now I have so many contacts, I don't pay as much attention. But at one point I would be like, here's a list of every company I might want to work for every single day. The first thing I do when I sit down at my computer is I will contact 3 to 4 people, ask to connect on LinkedIn. I spread those, and I mark down like, hey, I want to make sure I ask at least 6 people at each company I care about, because not all of them are going to connect. I don't personalize the connection request, not worth my time. I get about a 50% acceptance rate. When I personalize it, it's lower. So I just send the connection request, but I only send it to 2 types of people. I send it to SEOs at companies or to recruiters. And I'm sure if I sent it to other people, I'd probably have a much lower acceptance rates. So that's about 50%. And the great thing about that is you're expanding your network, you're making connections with people who might be at a company you want to work with, but some percentage of those requests, people are going to be like, who's this? Click over your profile, see who it is. Now you're getting more profile views, which boosts your visibility in search. If you really want to go the extra mile, apparently LinkedIn's algorithm does reward people who like interact, engagement with posts you make on LinkedIn, right? So if you really want to juice things up, you might go write a series of articles on common SEO misunderstandings or something like that to try to get a temporary surge in profile views. So that's my brief overview of LinkedIn. Now's a good time to endorse me for being endorsed.
I think all of that is really good advice for anybody looking for a job, not just in SEO. So that's probably going to be one of those social clips I pull out and use specifically for anybody looking for a job, because I think it's all really good advice. JJ, what characteristics do you feel like a VP of SEO should have on both the skill side as well as personable / leadership side?
Yeah, want to emphasize something you said earlier of peeking around that corner. You're not in the weeds anymore. That's the biggest thing is, and maybe for some people it's hard because you got to let go of the little things. Like you're past that. All the tiny little strategies you're now delegating or expecting your team to fulfill on. It's higher level stuff, and so being I'd say what one thing is definitely understanding how the industry is moving. You're now more concerned with different signals, changes that Google's doing, outside influences that could potentially harm your site. Like recently we audit stored a GA4. That's probably what you need to spear, unless you have a director of analytics that's just like, yeah, I know everything, and love those kind of people. But now you're worried about, how do I not lose data? How do I move my website over in this massive transition? There's things like that where that's peeking around the corner. That's knowing what's there, and even kind of getting a landscape of things, right? A lot of that as well is by following people that are talking higher level, like Kevin mentioned on X and other places. Is people are talking high level, that's who you need to interact with or follow or get their emails, their newsletters, things like that. So now it's broad strategy, right? It's where we're trying to move as a whole. Where should the website or the company be in 1 to 3 years? How am I going to help them get there, right? You're likely part of larger strategy meetings, whether it's executive meeting, directors. There's a lot more strategy there where you're now participating. And from my experience, you're looking for people to say certain things. You go, oh, my team can help with that. Or, oh, I have this kind of insight, right? Like on the e-commerce side, I remember going to the R&D team and just saying, hey, like, we haven't really interacted a whole lot before. I know what you guys kind of do, but I need to teach you what we do, and this amount of data and information we have access to, because maybe it can help you understand trends online. What are people searching for, right? Is the things that are on your product's roadmap match with search intent or interest level through forums or whatever it may be? Like, can we help supplement where you're trying to move as a company? So it's that higher level strategy. On the leadership side, there's so many different types of leaders, so many different types of people out there, and leadership styles and everything. I think having a leadership coach or a mentor is big. Somebody that you can rely on or throw things by, like, hey, I'm in this situation. The industry I'm in is the staffing industry right now. They have a mentorship program. I've been a part of it for the past year and a half, where I've been the mentor, but I've helped people with marketing, SEO. I've helped people with leadership because they just got a new team for the first time, right? Things like that are going to matter because you got to be able to have those one-on-ones. You got to be able to have those marketing meetings where you can discuss high level. You got to be able to understand how to ask questions to dig deeper and make your team think. You got to be able to challenge them. You're trying to move everything forward while creating leaders on your team, and at the same time figuring out who's good at what. If you have a large SEO team, some people will be made out for leadership roles and some won't. Some are really good at the grind and just checking boxes off and getting things done. Others like the strategy. They have a little more opinions. They're willing to do testing and trialing different things to see what works and doesn't work. You also got to know, how does SEO affect other channels? If you're part of a large company, maybe like Brian is, where SEO's this pod, and then there's a PPC pod, and there's an email pod, or whatever it looks like. How do you affect them? Because you will. And there's a lot of things you can do that makes their jobs easier and vice versa. And so you got to be, I guess, really well-rounded is a good way to say it. And that comes through experience. It comes through grinding it out. For me, it also comes from my experience through networking, knowing how other people have grinded to get to that position. Um, you know, you got to learn from others too. So
Yeah. If I were to sort of recap all of these different sections, I'm trying to think of like very basic things that separate each of the levels. And I would say on the first level, just getting into the first level from like high school or college into that first level, it is get some experience as fast as you can. So build your own website, get that experience, or start at an agency at a lower level and work your way up. The next level is leadership and managing people. So get a leadership coach, understand how to manage people and teams. And then just what you said on this last one, JJ, going from director to VP, it is all about cross-functional communication too. I can't tell you how many times in some of the last jobs where it was my job to sort of protect my team from all of the other chaos and political stuff happening, but also be able to say, this is actually what we should focus on. This is what we should not focus on. So don't give us stuff that's not going to move the needle. You're talking with people in IT, you're talking with people on the content team, you're talking with people who own other areas like the blog or YouTube that you influence with SEO, and you have to be able to understand how to communicate in the right way cross-functionally. And maybe you're already a good leader and that's how you got into that position, which is the level below, but now you have to lead sort of sideways instead of down. You have to look sideways. Guys, this has been amazing. Sort of wrapping a bow on this and maybe putting a cherry on top. Is there anything we missed in any of these categories before we end this session?
I want to stress real quickly the need to find people that can think critically and to be a critical thinker. And this is so silly. And JJ and Eli, you've probably heard me say this before in an interview, but I'll ask someone like a thinking question. How many planes do you think are in the sky at any given time in the United States? I've been asking a question, a question in an interview, like, I give you a pallet of bricks. What are you going to do with it? Like, and it's amazing how many people just like seize up at a question like that. They can't think that on their feet. There's no creativity to that. And with the airplane question, I don't care. Like, I don't even really care what number they come up with. I just want them to back out of it. Like, how did you get to that number? What was the logical steps you took from one to the next and the next that helped you get there? So that's just another, I think, super important, maybe obvious thing to look for in someone that you're looking to hire or just you're wanting to improve yourself, is improve your critical thinking skills, your ability to, again, think about not just one solution to a problem, but are there lateral thinking? Are there other ways to solve this problem that could be pursued that might get us, a different iteration that could get us where we really need to be?
Yeah. So if you have time, go Google and Amazon interview questions, and that'll give you a lot of those thinking ones. I remember one that I was asked at one point was, how much blue paint is sold in America every year? And the way that I walked back into this, like you were saying, Kevin, you have to like explain your way, was like, okay, there's 350 million people in America, and let's say 50% of them are male, and males mostly like blue, and X% are kids' rooms and boys, and like you walk your way back and say about this many gallons times 12 months in a year, whatever, right? But like thinking through why that would make sense, whether you're right or wrong. Like the point is not to be wrong. The point is to be able to think through a solution. So Brian.
I was just gonna say, I think one of the skills that is super important as in SEO is the ability to just do shit that matters. And it is so easy to do like a technical SEO audit and come up with a huge list of things that is not going to move the needle. I'm not going to make an extra $1. I'm not going to get an extra 10 visits. Technically, it's a best practice. Technically, yes, in a perfect world, everything would be beautiful and clean and perfect. But as you move from like the junior level to the manager level, I think the ability to know what things you're going to do are actually going to make a difference or have a chance of making a difference becomes this really crucial skill. And I think this is one of the reasons I like people who have built their own sites, because that seems to be more baked into those people than people who have like just worked on, particularly agencies or third parties, where I love getting resumes from people like, oh, my SEO traffic increased by 5% year over year. I'm like, oh, searches increased by 10% year over year. So I think you're falling behind.
Yeah.
Yeah, JJ.
And my final thing would be, and biased because my own experience, but start at an agency. We've kind of said that, but if I had to start over again, I would start right at an agency. And the reason why, and what I loved about my experience, is I got exposed to so many different verticals and different types of companies that I had to strategize and think so differently for every single one of them to make them successful. So the exposure was there. So by the time I was ready, or I felt I was ready to go in-house somewhere, I'm like, okay, here's all the experience I can bring. And during the interview, I would say, okay, well, you're in this e-commerce space. Let me tell you the e-commerce sites I worked on and the struggles or the wins and things like that. I think trying to become well-rounded by being exposed to everything first, I would say, is the best way to go. I was an agency for 4 years. I think that was the best foundation I could have started with, because I got exposed to everything. And it's also there where, like it's mentioned earlier, I started my own website and I started playing around. It was okay if it didn't work because it was my time, my dollar, but I took all these experiences I was getting at work across multiple industries and figured, what do I do for me? How do I make my website work? And it eventually did and turned into a company, 13 years later. And so get well-rounded first, figure out what you like, what you don't like. There's certain industries that you will probably end up hating and just don't vibe with, and that's great. So now focusing on those you love, because you can get really specific and really technical. Somebody's going to appreciate that someday. Somebody's going to find you on LinkedIn because you say international SEO or different keywords like Brian mentioned, which are great tips, by the way. But hyper focusing down the road is going to really matter, make a difference. And I believe that comes by getting exposed to as much as possible first, instead of just being one laid and trying to bounce between e-commerce or B2B or professional service or whatever that may look like. It's hard to start over if you're going industry to industry instead of maybe all of them. Then
Ryan.
And I think a really good point with that is, as you advance in your career, at some point, some degree of specialization helps you get jobs, right? Working on a bunch of e-commerce sites helps you get jobs on e-commerce sites. Working on directory gets you directory. B2B gets you B2B. Sometimes very, very narrow, like, oh, in the ed tech industry, they want people with ed tech industry experience. And yeah, if you go down a road and decide you don't like your industry, it doesn't mean you can't cross industries and get a job somewhere else. It's just a little bit more challenging. And so being able to have that exposure to the different kinds from the agency, all the different kinds of sites, and have some idea what you would like to do, probably will make it easier when it does come time to go in-house and specialize a little bit.
Yeah. Well, guys, it's been awesome talking with you and learning from you. I hope that everybody who is listening has taken some value out of this. If you're in any of these positions and need additional recommendations or help, you can find all of us on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out. We can give some thoughts, advice, tips, or whatever. The last thing I'll say is use LinkedIn a lot. Like Brian said, connect with people, because not only will it help you, but it'll help you be able to connect your friends when they need it as well. So be involved in the LinkedIn community, use it for good. And again, appreciate you guys all taking the time to jump on and share your knowledge with us today. And to everyone else who's listening out there, we'll talk to you guys next week.